Hello, welcome back. My name is Douglas Grummins, and today I'm continuing with the book 10,000 Waves, Chapter 2. Thanks for joining me again, and I hope you enjoy all the times we share together. Anyway, this era is about 1994, I want to say. We had just moving back to Texas from Northern Virginia, and we're getting into snowboarding and riding the waves in Texas, as we discussed in Chapter 1. But anyway, now we're going to continue on with Chapter 2. Now back to the text. The introduction of Leo, Chapter 2. After coming home from Santa Fe, I had questions. With winter over, it was back to surfing and one of my other interests, Aikido. I started studying Aikido in Northern Virginia, and I wanted to keep studying in Texas. I had visited a little school in northwest Houston and sat in on a couple of classes. I found the system of the school was a little different from what I had started learning in Virginia. The instructor, also known as a sensei, was this little Chinese guy named Tai. After a few months of trying to teach my friends Aikido, I realized I really didn't know much about the art. Humbling myself, I joined the school, and Tai seemed not to like me too much at first. He never seemed to correct my mistakes. Still, as I watched this fellow demonstrate the techniques, he would amaze me. My sensei in Northern Virginia was so different. He would not break down the technique into parts. He just showed the technique as a whole and left you to figure out all the minor details. And this seemed to be an artistic approach. Tai took the time to break down the technique, analyze all the parts, and put it all back together. I have always been the most determined person I had ever met, and with my surfing I always pushed myself harder than anyone I knew. When the waves became too big for most of my friends to make it out, I would not give up. I always forced myself to the outside, no matter how hard the paddle out would be. With my Aikido, I was the same way. At the time, I didn't realize it, but surfing is probably the hardest sport in the world to become really good at. Aikido comes in at a close second. It takes an incredibly long time just to get the basics down. And when I joined the Aikido school in Texas, my hair was really long, past my shoulders, and Tai used to give me so much hell about my hair. He seemed to jump all over me if I did the slightest thing wrong. Otherwise, he didn't say much to me. Tai treated me like he did not want me there. At least that's how he made me feel at most times. And this went on for about 6 months, until the day I met Leo. All the students that studied with Tai were amazing people. The more we practiced, the more we opened up to each other. These Aikidoists reminded me of my surfing buddies, and we became like family. 6 months had passed, and still Tai would not talk to me. And then I made friends with this new young Chinese fellow named Leo. Leo was amazing to me because he moved here from China, and his English was really good, better than mine. I had asked him how long he had been studying English, and he responded that he had only been speaking English for 6 months. One night after class, Leo brought up the topic of meditation. Leo, being a Buddhist, started telling me all about Zen. I really didn't know much about Zen, so I asked Leo if he could tell me what Zen is, and Leo answered by telling me that Zen is to be experienced. It's hard to put it into words what Zen is. It's like describing what sugar is, and when you have never tasted it. I asked Leo to explain what he meant to me, and he used the example of 2 samurai facing each other in the moment of battle, swords drawn, and the one who thinks before he moves dies. See, when you move that fast, you use your consciousness and not your mind. If you use your mind to think about which way to cut, it would be too late, and you would die. Leo explained, with Zen, it is consciousness as a witness. It's as if you are just watching your actions. My surfing is just like that, what Leo was describing to me. When I see a good wave, I turn and I start paddling. Once I'm locked into the wave, it's as if I am one with the wave. Everything is moving so fast, but at the same time, everything slows down. Most of the time, it's like the description. If I think, then I feel disconnected from the wave. And Leo said that is the essence of Zen. Surfers are practicing Zen without even knowing it. I think that's why surfers are some of the happiest people on the planet. I guess I had also had a Zen experience when I went snowboarding in Colorado. I told Leo about my experiencing the letting go the letting God use my body as I sat back and watched God rip up the mountain. Leo said that is exactly Zen, just witnessing, subjectively. I went on to tell him that the second time I tried to have the same experience, I fell flat on my face. That time, it didn't feel like God wanted to rip up the mountain. What was the difference? The first time it happened, he said, you gave yourself up to the divine. It was pure, with no expectations. And you were giving yourself to the divine as if you were a child. Do you think that's what Jesus meant when he told his followers to come to God as children? And Leo exclaimed, yes, that is exactly what I am talking about. The second time I tried it and I fell. Was that not the same? I was confused. Could you explain how it was that I was not childlike? The difference, Leo told me, is that in Zen, it has to be a total commitment. Leo went on to explain that even a 99% commitment is not a total commitment. It is like water. It does not boil at 99 degrees. It only boils at 100 degrees Celsius or 212 degrees Fahrenheit. At sea level, a transformation occurs at exactly 100 degrees, and the water turns into steam. With Zen, when you dive into an activity and give 100% with awareness, then a transformation occurs. But what kind of transformation? Leo explained that if you share a moment with existence, or call it God if you want, within this moment you transcend time. There is no past and no future, and you are 100% in the present moment. The first time I rode with God, I was just being a witness. I did not have any preconceptions or expectations. The second time, I had a very subtle greed. That next time, I was trying to duplicate the first experience. What pulled myself from the present moment and into both the past and 1% and the future 1%, it was the desire to repeat the experience that made it happen, that made it impure. It pulled me from the present moment back into time. Therefore, it is only 99%. Desire is a subtle form of greed, Leo explained. My desire to have a spiritual experience stopped me from having a spiritual experience. Leo then enlightened me further by telling me that it doesn't have to be an extreme life-threatening experience to have a Zen moment. Anything done totally without the mind, breaking it down and dissecting it, is a Zen moment. It can be a Zen experience. Staring at the sunrise without thought, just caught in the moment. This is Zen. Even if you say, wow, how beautiful, it is ruined. It is not a true Zen experience then. Your mind can come in and start trying to dissect the moment next time you see a sunrise. Just watch. See how long you can stare at it without watching or without trying to describe it. Even if it's just for a few seconds, you share a moment with the divine. Zen practitioners even practicing Zen awareness, walking very slowly and watching every step, aware of moving each foot forward. They shift the weight from one leg to the other, just walking without thought. There are Zen monks who practice Zen all day in all their actions, Leo explained. And I said, wow, now that sounds more extreme than launching yourself off of a double black diamond. But Leo then explained that awareness increases the more you practice Zen. The more awareness you gain, the greater your consciousness grows. And I said, do you think that's why so many surfers live only to surf? Possibly so, Leo said. But what about all the people who practice sitting meditation? Is that Zen? We call it Zazen, Leo said. And I said, what does that mean? He explained that it meant just sitting and not doing anything, not even meditating, just sitting. I said, sounds interesting, I said. What do you do when you sit there and your mind is full of thoughts? And it's the same as with your active meditations. You just watch your thoughts. Don't feed them. Watch and be aware, and they will start to settle down. It's like when a rock is tossed into a lake and creates ripples or on the lake's surface. Thoughts are waves, and the mind is like a lake. If you keep throwing rocks into the lake, the waves continue. If you keep adding energy to your thoughts, thought waves continue and create ripples in your mind. So by watching, stepping back and witnessing, the mind stills, just like a lake, Leo said. But then he told me a story about Buddha. And Buddha was trying to describe what I am just describing to you, Leo said. One of his disciples asked him how to still the mind, and Buddha took him to the riverside and said, "Look at the water in the river. It's clear now, and you can see the bottom, right?" "Yes," said his disciple, "it is very clear." Then Buddha stepped with one foot into the water, and then he pulled his foot out. "Now what does the water look like?" Buddha asked. "It's all murky. I can't see the bottom," he said. "Now just sit here and watch the river. Do not touch the river, just watch." And within several minutes, the sediment settled down and the river became clear again. And Buddha told his disciple the same applies to the mind. Just watch, and soon the mind will still just like the river, and you will be able to see with clarity. I was eager to try Zazen. I went back to my house and gave it a try. I sat there for 15 minutes watching my thoughts. Every thought of the day passed by. At first it was like rush hour, but after several minutes of just being a watcher, out of the blue my mind became still. It was only for a few seconds, but it happened. Just a few seconds filled me with bliss. It was as Leo described, very addictive. It gave me the same feeling as when I rode a wave, in some ways. I started meditating every day, every morning or every evening. As the days went on, the gaps of thought went from a few seconds to a few minutes. I started noticing that my consciousness was growing. I was now able to understand some things that I could not understand in the past. Before long, I started meditating 3 times a day. And when I went to the ocean, I would sit in the water, would close my eyes and just listen to the waves. Those meditations were so powerful. When I did this, my mind stilled so fast, and the moments of silence now lasted over 15 minutes. Feeling that there might be a connection with the water, I started meditating in my apartment's pool early in the morning, and this is where I first felt what I could only describe as electric shocks. I asked Leo about these shocks, and he told me that I have been shifting into deeper dimensions. These energy shifts started happening in every session. Soon after, I could feel up to 7 shifts each time I meditated. Tai, my sensei, started noticing the change in me. After 6 months of testing my steel, he finally accepted me as one of his students. Tai told me that I previously had a learning disability, and I could not see it because my mind was so clouded. And looking back, I could see what he meant. Breaking out of the text, I remember how my manners, American manners towards Tai, definitely needed a lot of improving. I needed to learn the ways of these Japanese martial artists. Anyway, back to the text. I was like the river that was all clouded. Now a lot of things were becoming clear. I was growing spiritually, and I started feeling a connection between the ocean and myself. Every time I dreamt of surfing, there were waves the next day. It was as if existence became my surf report. At that time, we did not have surf forecasters, and if you wanted the surf report, you had to wait until James Fulbright, a local surf shop owner, made the report for that day. It was mostly spooky if I had dreamt about waves, but sure enough, the hour drive to Galveston or Surfside, it was worth it. It wasn't long before I also started bringing awareness into my work life. At that time, I had a job with an electrical contractor in Houston who had also worked on low voltage wiring. I remember when I started bringing in awareness and punching down the data wires, slowly watching myself untwist and lay in the colored pairs. When I finished the project I was working on, I was filled with so much bliss and joy. I had felt the same joy when I was young. One of my chores when I was young was washing the dishes after supper. I always complained and begged reprieve, but I never got it. Usually all the good series on television, the way Matagorda Bay is shaped, it is the deepest point that close to the shore. This meant that nothing blocked the waves' energy as they approached to the shoreline. If the surf was only 1 foot in Galveston, then sometimes it would be up as big as 3 feet in Matagorda. And this day I felt compelled to make the trek. When you get to Matagorda after a 2-hour drive, the journey is only half over. Matagorda is definitely a whole day trip, and you must bring a lunch with plenty of water and mosquito spray. Once you pull up to the parking lot, you load everything up into a backpack, and then you strap it on and paddle across the ship channel. which is rumored to have alligators in it. We would watch the currents and which way they were flowing. One miscalculation and you'd miss the small beach on the other side of the channel. Once across the channel, you have to walk on top of this 4-foot round drainage pipe for almost a mile. And if we walked in the grass, then the mosquitoes would eat us to death. And when you finally brave the alligators and mosquitoes, you come up to one of the only point breaks in Texas. The drainage pipe pumped out sand full of out into the channel and down the beach. And this formed a perfect sandy bottomed A-frame wave. Many times my friends and I made the trek down to the beach to score perfect 3-foot barreling waves. Only this time it was just myself and barely anything to ride at all. The waves were too small to ride and the water was really clear. Surfers were the only people who ever visited this beach, and there were lots of cows in the pastures behind the beach. But other than the cows, I was completely alone. I just drove all the way from Houston, so I didn't want to leave just yet. I sat down on the water's edge, crossed my eyes, and went into meditation. And after about 30 minutes of sitting there, listening to the waves, without a thought in my mind, my inner voice told me to go into the water. And what happened next was so amazing. I walked into the water until the water was just above my thighs, and as I stood there, a family of porpoises surrounded me. I was so in awe. The babies were brushing up against my legs as Mom and Dad popped up and their heads up to see if I was a threat or not. The teenagers would swim right up to me and then race away. The teenagers would then flap out of the water and show me their aerobatic skills, flipping in the air not 15 feet from me. There must have been about 100 or more swimming all around me. And for about 30 minutes, I felt like I was accepted as one of them. The whole time I was out there, eventually they swam away. And even though I didn't get to surf, this was one of my favorite surf trips. One of my favorite snowboarding trips happened when we went to Keystone Ski Resort in Colorado, just up the road from Breckenridge. Keystone is a beautiful resort with several peaks to ride. One trail is over 4 miles long and very wide. They have a nice gondola to take you to the tops, and sometimes the backcountry bowls are open for anyone who dares to go ride them. On my last day at Keystone, they opened up a back bowl, and I was alone, and going backcountry by yourself can be very dangerous. I thought it over and decided it would be worth the risk. So I rode my board over to the base of the bowl and then trekked up to the peak. Suddenly, the urge to meditate came over me, and I sat on the edge of the bowl and went into deep meditation. And when I came out from meditating, the ski patrol skied up to me and asked me what I was doing. I told him I was meditating. Then he told me to be safe, and he wanted to see some clean lines as I rode down the face of the bowl. Floating on the fresh, untouched powder all the way down to the bowl was so beautiful. When I hit the tree line, the trouble started. The trees were too thick to maintain the speed I needed to keep floating. I sank about 4 feet deep in the snow, and I was stuck there in the deep snow. The only thing I could think of to do was to take the board off my feet and lie down across its surface like a surfboard. One stroke at a time, I paddled out into the clearing as I laid on my belly. Another whole day was spent just for one taste of fresh powder in a back bowl. Life seemed to be like that. The greater the risk, the greater the reward. My time in the back country was full of solitude, but I was facing nature in all her ruggedness and beauty. Well, that concludes Chapter 2. Chapter 3 is my first taste of honey, which is very juicy and beautiful stories that we'll continue with next time. Anyway, thank you for joining me. Have a nice day. Take care now.